Elections are never just about the numbers. They're about people. They're about the soil, the water, livelihoods, the quiet dignity of everyday life. Today, we're going deep into the hills of Nagaland, into the Northern Angami II Constituency. But we're not looking for a close fight. We're here to understand the opposite, an electoral landslide. A result so one-sided that it forces us to ask some very fundamental questions about political competition and ultimately about governance. Our purpose here isn't to take sides, but to understand the system itself, using data as our guide, always in the public interest.
In these hills, democracy has its own unique voice, one that's shaped by ancient traditions and, of course, modern aspirations. But the 2023 election here in Northern Angami II, well, it throws up a real puzzle, a near-unanimous vote. So what does a result like this actually mean? Is it a sign of perfect harmony, a community in complete agreement? Or does it signal something else? Maybe a system where the channels for an alternative voice have just gone quiet. To find the answer, first, we have to listen. Before we look at any party or any leader, we have to understand the ground truth. You see, politics doesn't begin in assembly halls. It begins in the village, on the farm, and the daily struggles of a family. The real foundation of any political analysis is citizen grievance. What are the hopes, the fears, that shape daily life? That's always the starting point.
Now, what's really fascinating here is the consistency. Just look, whether you're in a rural village or a more urban area, the core concerns are basically the same. People want reliable roads, they want stable electricity, and they want jobs for the next generation. These are not abstract political ideas, are they? They're the building blocks of a dignified life. And notice, also, the high concern for land rights, a deep-rooted issue tied to identity and security. This is the conversation that's happening on the ground. Any political force that wants to be relevant has to speak this language.
Okay, so with that foundation of voter grievances in our minds, let's turn to the election itself. We're going to dissect the numbers from 2023. And believe me, these figures tell a dramatic story of complete political consolidation. The first number to get your head around is the turnout, over 84%. This is not a population that is disengaged. Far from it. People showed up to vote. This high participation tells us that the democratic process is valued here. The people believe their vote matters. The question is, what message did they send with that vote? This is the winning margin, 15,824 votes. Now, in a constituency with just over 21,000 voters, a margin of this size is just immense. It's not just a victory, it's a complete overwhelming of the political space. It points to a landscape with one dominant force and almost no counterweight. And here it is, the knockout punch. The winning candidate from the ruling NDPP alliance secured nearly 93% of the total valid votes. Just think about that for a second. More than 9 out of every 10 people who cast a ballot voted for one candidate. In most healthy democracies, winning with 50% is considered a strong mandate. A number this high, it's an extreme outlier, and it demands a much deeper explanation. And this is the key that unlocks the whole story. The landslide wasn't just because the incumbent was strong. It was just as much because the opposition was completely absent. The Naga People's Front, the NPF, historically a major force in this very seat, didn't even have a name on the ballot paper. Voters didn't have a real choice. So the question we have to ask is, how does a major political party just vanish from one of its own strongholds? To answer that, we have to look back. We need to do a kind of forensic analysis of the data, of the history here, to understand the patterns. Because this wasn't a sudden event. It was the final step in a long process of political erosion and collapse. The data really tells the story of how it all happened. This timeline, well, it lays out the entire arc perfectly. In 1993, the NPF is a small player with less than 20% of the vote. Over the next decade, they build, they grow, and by 2013, they're at an incredible peak, 85% of the vote, an absolute fortress. And then, the collapse. In 2018, their vote share plummets to 0. Why? Because their sitting MLA, the face of the party in this constituency, he contests and wins, but under a new banner, the NDPP. By 2023, the NPF is gone from the field. This is a political earthquake, and it had 2 clear epicenters. These are the 2 inflection points. First, in 2018, the departure of the constituency's most powerful leader. It hollowed out the party from the top. When a leader with that kind of personal vote moves, they don't just take their votes, they take the perception of victory with them.
But the final, fatal blow came in 2022. That mass defection of 21 NPF MLAs across the state, that wasn't just a loss of legislators, it was the demolition of the party's entire structure. This led to what we in the business call an organizational vacuum. See, a political party is so much more than its famous faces. It's a human network. It's the booth committee in every village, the local leaders who people trust, the workers who get the vote out. When those 21 MLAs left, they took that entire machinery with them. They left behind an empty shell. Without that grassroots structure, a party has no eyes, no ears, no voice on the ground. It simply cannot fight. And this is why, in a democracy, the responsibility for informed public speech rests not just with us as individuals, but with the very structures that enable it. The dignity of the voter is truly upheld when they have real choices, supported by robust organizations. But is this situation permanent? Well, no political reality ever is. The very same data that shows us the collapse also contains the seeds of a potential comeback. So, as a strategic exercise, how could an alternative political voice be rebuilt here? Not with quick fixes, but with a patient, data-driven, ground-up strategy. Let's take a look at the blueprint. It all comes down to 3 fundamental pillars. First, you have to go back to the soil. Rebuild the organization village by village, booth by booth. Without a functional grassroots network, nothing else is even possible. Second, you have to craft a new narrative. The old stories just aren't working anymore. The new message must connect directly to those grievances we saw earlier: the roads, the power, the jobs. And third, you have to find a new messenger. The party needs a credible, fresh face who's rooted in the community. Our data suggests an archetype, a tribal mobilizer, someone with organic credibility, not just a legacy name. And this really shows the shift that's needed. The old narrative was all about the party's history, about abstract ideas like clean governance. The new narrative has to be concrete and urgent. It's not about what the party did 20 years ago. It's about fixing the road today. It's not about heritage. It's about creating a job for a young person tomorrow. It's about taking that abstract idea of identity and making it a concrete promise to protect what the community holds dear. This is how you connect with the voter grievances we saw right at the beginning. Now, in today's world, you can't rebuild without smart communication, especially for an opposition that has limited resources. Low-cost digital tools are the great equalizer. Village-level WhatsApp groups for direct communication, short, engaging videos on Instagram to connect with the youth, a disciplined team of digital volunteers. This is how you bypass old power structures and build a direct relationship with the voter. But this comes with a profound responsibility. Any data collected must be used only with the clear consent of the citizen, upholding their privacy and their dignity, especially under India's evolving data protection framework.
So we've deconstructed the landslide, and we've outlined a blueprint for rebuilding an alternative. But why does any of this matter? Why is a competitive election so important? Because the ultimate goal of politics is not just winning elections, it's delivering governance. And governance always improves when there is accountability. This is the absolute crucial point. A strong opposition, a real alternative. It keeps the government on its toes. It forces the ruling party to be more responsive to those citizen grievances we started with: the roads, the power, the jobs. The tension of competition is really what fuels progress. When that tension disappears, when one voice becomes the only voice, the risk of complacency just grows. This isn't about one party versus another. It's about the health of the entire democratic system. And this leaves us with a final, fundamental question. In a landscape this consolidated, with nearly 93% of the vote going one way, who speaks for the 7% who disagreed? Who speaks for those whose grievances are not being addressed? Who holds power to account on behalf of the most vulnerable? A healthy democracy needs answers to these questions. It needs multiple voices to make sure that everyone, not just the majority, is heard. If you want to become a people-centric leader and uplift your constituency, get in touch with blueprintstrategies.ai at mgr@blueprintstrategies.ai or call 080-4204-1602. Purpose beyond politics.